Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Tonight is Wednesday, November 7th, 2018. And tonight's topic, Sessions resigns. Rosenstein is out and post-midterm election analysis. What's next? We're going to go through those topics tonight. And after you hear tonight's episode, that will be all you need to know. Well, actually, it'll be all that I know, and I will have imparted it to you. Remember, anytime someone says this is all you need to know, means you better do more research and take a further look. But I'm going to tell you what I know, and sometimes that's a lot, and sometimes it's just passing knowledge. But I hope to give you a bit more than that tonight. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, we're going to go through the events that happened yesterday in the elections. And this will be an impartial analysis, trying to explain what happened and what I think might happen. Not what I think should happen or want to happen, but go through what happened, why it happened in the elections, why they came out the way they did, and what the consequences are and what the implications are. And had I done this 6 or 7 hours ago, I would have had a different show, but now some things have happened, so we're going to comment on those. For example, there was a press conference today, quite fiery with the press and Donald Trump. We're going to go through that, maybe play a couple of clips. And also, it was announced that Sessions had resigned, and he had been requested to resign by, I think it was General Kelly, at the request of Donald Trump. But we're going to get into all that. But before we do, let's just make sure we cover what happened in the markets. Now, one of the things I had said back in, I think it was on Halloween, was the best result for the market would be Democrats win the House, Republicans keep the Senate. And the rationale there would be that if the Republicans won straight up, there might be that initial euphoria in the markets that everything's going to be fine. But I think what would have happened is you would have seen a lot of concern over runaway deficits, because then Trump would be spending money on the military, the border wall, pre-existing conditions. You would have a free-for-all on spending, and people would be concerned about the deficit and then the tax. You might get the Fed worrying about that and raising rates to stave that off. I thought if the Democrats won the House and controlled the purse, that would appear to be somewhat of a check on unbridled spending. And in fact, I think they're going to have a hard time spending money if the Democrats are in control, because the Democrats will want to spend money on certain things, and they'll create a bill, they'll send it to the Senate, and the Senate will say, no way, Jose, and then even if they do agree, let's say, on something like infrastructure building, they may not agree as to where and how much. So I think that would be the best, I thought that would be the best thing for the markets. And after the first day, we'll never know what would have happened if the Republicans won both houses, both the Senate and the House, or if the Democrats won both. But we do know, based on what happened today in the stock market, we had a massive rally. Dow Jones up 545 points, taking it over 26,000 to 26,180. That was good for a 2.13% gain. NASDAQ, another mega rally, up almost 200 points, 194 points, and that was good for a 2.64% increase. And that takes the NASDAQ to 7570. S&P 500 also up 2.12%, up 58 points to 2813. The gold and silver markets were subdued. Gold opened the day. I don't have the charts for you today because we're going to be discussing, this might be a long one, we're going to be discussing the election results, Trump's news press conference, and the whole Mueller Sessions Rosenstein situation and Russian investigation. So gold is at 1224. It did rally a bit in the after hours last night, but today was pretty much a non-event day. Just drifted slightly lower, even though we had this mega rally on Wall Street, closed at 1224. Silver, pretty much the same thing. Was up a bit for a while, but as the day wore on and the equity prices ground higher, then silver dipped a bit and ended at 1451. All right, let's get into our Pablo Pena says, I missed the intro music. Which one was it? I think it was Dow 20,000. All right. So what happened yesterday? Well, the news is, and everyone knows the news by now, is that the Republicans gained seats in the Senate and the Democrats gained seats in the House. And we had, as we discussed, that split decision where now Nancy Pelosi will become the Speaker of the House and McConnell will remain the head of the Senate. And we're going to discuss what that means. But the interesting thing is we go through the Senate races. We don't have time to go through all the individual House races. But the Senate races where Trump went and actually flipped a blue seat to red were instructive because, for example, Claire McCaskill lost by 10 points to Josh Hawley. And Heidi Heitkamp lost by almost 20 points. She was the Democratic incumbent. So you had two female Democrat incumbents losing by wide margins to their upstart Republican challengers. And a lot of that was based on Trump going there. But one of the main things is, we'll see, is that both Heidi Heitkamp and Claire McCaskill were Democratic senators in blue states. I mean, in red states. And they had always presented themselves as relative moderates. And therefore, they were able to present themselves to the voters as, look, we're Democrats, but we can appeal to you. We're not just beholden to anything the Democrats say. Well, part of the Trump strategy was to go to those battleground states and try to flip the seats and support the Republican candidates by saying that these people were aligned with, quote, crying Chuck Schumer, and they, because they voted in line with the Democrats, were responsible for the or tied them to the negativity surrounding the Kavanaugh hearings. Made a big point of saying it was the Democrats that treated Kavanaugh unfairly and so on. So you had McCaskill and Heidi Heitkamp both rejected very soundly in the two Senate races. They're statewide races. Okay, then you also had another one who lost, was Donnelly. And again, Donnelly was from Indiana. He lost by 11 points to a guy named Mike Braun, and it was the same situation. Indiana is a red state, but Joe Donnelly comes across as a moderate guy. But what Trump did by going there a lot and having these rallies was he portrayed anyone who was a Democrat as being, remember, mobs, not jobs, and as part of the radical left, and they're going to take a wrecking ball to the economy, and they treated Judge Kavanaugh unfairly. Well, that line of attack and those rallies actually did manage to tie the Democratic candidates who had been in good standing. Remember, they won election to the Senate in their states, did manage to tie the candidates to a negative portrayal that he created about the Democrats. Voting for crying Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, Mad Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi. He was trying to tie, and he successfully did that. So very, very big wins in those three states. Also, to a lesser extent, he did the same in managing to flip Florida Senate seat with Rick Scott, who's not the most charismatic of guys, and he had been the governor, but he managed to win a slight victory over Bill Nelson, who had been the senator there for, I think, 3 terms, maybe even 4. So he's a very popular standard figure in Florida, and Obama had gone there to campaign for him. Also, they managed to get the governorship with a guy named Ron DeSantis, who had just been a congressman, young guy, congressman from Florida, who had been in the Freedom Caucus. He went and ran for governor, and he beat the charismatic Andrew Gillum, who also had support from President Obama going there. And again, but for the Trump interference in these elections, it's doubtful that any of those candidates would have managed to win on their own. It'd just be impossible, I think, to defeat established candidates. Heidi Heitkamp hadn't had any issues with her constituency that I'm aware of for her first 6-year term. Claire McCaskill, I think, has been there for a while. It wasn't like she was under any type of any type of scrutiny because she wasn't doing her job. Same with Joe Donnelly. All reports are that Joe Donnelly in Indiana was a relatively popular guy. He wasn't somebody people were trying to get rid of. So by going there, I think those are 3 seats that flipped. And you wouldn't expect, you would think you'd have to be playing defense in the Senate, given the supposed Trump unpopularity, as you keep hearing. Now, also, the Senate was kept by Cruz beating Beto in Texas. Now, that's a big deal also because Beto has been hailed as the second coming. He's the new Obama. He speaks with the same gesticulations. He has a lot of them. They put 70, 80, upwards, they say, to $100 million into that campaign in favor of Beto. And they made him out to be the rock star, and there was a lot of help. Now, Obama did not support him. It's a little strange. I don't know why he didn't. And Beto said, I don't need it. He didn't say I don't need his support. He said, I don't want it. We got cut off again. This happens a lot on our live streams here. I don't know why it happens, but it does indeed happen. So Beto O'Rourke lost to Senator Ted Cruz by not a big margin, but a big enough margin, especially given the fact that there was 70, 80, $90 million dropped into that race, and that the immediate attention that O'Rourke got was that he really is this up-and-coming guy. In fact, after he lost, Newsweek and others are saying, well, this is great. Now he can run for president. Now, generally, you start thinking about people as presidential material after they win a couple of big races, and you say, yeah, this guy's an up-and-comer. So, for example, when Obama became a senator, you're like, yeah, okay, well, now he's up there. He's a senator. He's going places. And they kind of pushed Obama quickly. Obama even said, when he first became senator, he said, I'm a believer that you have to have experience and know what you're doing before you... And then he went and ran anyway. But that's not the point. The point is, Beto lost, and they're saying that he should be the candidate. Now, I guess after you spend $90 million on somebody, you want to get some type of return on him. But anyway, he lost as well. So you have the Republicans picking up seats on the strength of Trump visiting those places. So he took Indiana, took North Dakota, and Missouri handily. It wasn't even close. To flip a seat is one thing, but to flip it in a big way is another. Then he went, as we mentioned, took Texas, retained Texas. Also, Tennessee, huge win. Now, Tennessee had been held by a guy named Corker, who is not a big fan of Donald Trump. In fact, he was somewhat of an anti-Trumper, just like Jeff Flake in Arizona. And so getting his own person in there was a big deal. So he campaigned hard there, and he did manage to help her unseat a relatively popular guy, Breeden, I think it was his name. And this was also the race, you have to remember, that Taylor Swift was out and about, first time ever entering the political fray, saying, oh no, we got to go Tennessee, we got to go out there and vote against the Trump candidates. And she won very, very handily. I mean, she was just a congressperson. She wasn't a big deal in the state of Tennessee. This guy was a senator. I mean, I think, he wasn't a senator. I think he'd been a governor. He'd been the governor of Tennessee. So again, very big win to beat off Beto, to beat off a challenge from Beto in Texas with all that money to promote your own candidate, new candidate in Tennessee and beat the governor, and then to manage to also beat back a challenge from Andrew Gillum and Obama in Florida, and then also the guy ran for senator in Florida as well. And as we mentioned, and win against Donnelly in Indiana and Heitkamp in North Dakota and McCaskill in Missouri. These are very, very big wins. And they are. I don't care what you say. You may not like Trump, the fact that he went there and held those rallies, and the fact that these candidates took his support, wanted his support, sought his support, are why they won. I mean, they preached the same line that he did. Strong borders, strong economy, all the stuff that Trump says at his rallies, they didn't argue with it. They didn't try to distance themselves for it. Same with the Georgia governor race. Trump went there in support of a guy named Brian Kemp. I don't know who he is. I'm sure he's somebody in Georgia. But again, running against the very popular Miss Abrams, who had the support not only of Obama, but of Oprah. And she lost. So again, Trump's showing that if he goes somewhere... Now, you would think, now there is a conventional wisdom that you wanted to stay away from Trump. But we're seeing now, though, in some of those Senate races, the Kavanaugh effect was real in these red states. They did feel that Kavanaugh received a bad deal. He was unfairly accused, and he played it up, and he played it up as something that the Democrats promoted. He promoted that whole concept, and basically he got people that were not necessarily the most charismatic or the most experienced to beat the experienced incumbent senators from Indiana, from Missouri, and from North Dakota. Now, winning Texas isn't that big of a deal because you're supposed to win Texas. But again, Cruz is not the most charismatic, not the most likable guy. And this Beto guy is young and fit, and he's out there pumping his fist, and he's supposedly a rock star, and he had all that money behind him. But he lost. And remember, Trump held a huge rally there. I think it was in some kind of arena, like 20, 30,000 people. So, and again, he had called the guy Lion Ted, if you recall, and still managed to go there and promote the guy and help push him across the finish line. Now, there's a couple of other states outstanding in the Senate. There's McSally versus Sienna, I think her name is, in Arizona, and that's very close, and Trump did campaign for her. They did lose, the Republicans did lose Nevada by a pretty big margin. I mean, the guy who lost in Nevada was lost to a person named Rosen. Heller was his name, and he lost by 3 or 4 points, but he was the incumbent. So that was a Democrat flip. And then Tester in Montana almost lost to his challenger, who Trump stumped for quite extensively, making 3 or 4 trips to Montana. So clearly there was a Trump effect in the Senate races. No two ways about it. Now, having the Senate is more important. We're going to talk about the consequences of having the Senate versus having the House. So the Kavanaugh effect was definitely an impact that Trump played up. Also, there were Project Veritas videos in each of those states that they all showed, other than the Beto campaign, that the candidates from McCaskill in Missouri to Donnelly in Indiana to Heitkamp in North Dakota, that they were not really moderates, and that they actually held views that were more progressive, but yet the campaign people are saying, well, they just say they're moderates in order to get the moderate vote, but they're really not. And that had somewhat of an impact, I would imagine. The Beto campaign, I don't know what damage this one did, was there was a Project Veritas video that showed that the Beto campaign was using some of those $70 million or $80 million to fund illegal alien humanitarian aid. Like they were buying them water and baby diapers and bringing them materials, which again was fine. And you could say, well, you don't want to be against it for that. You could say, well, you shouldn't be aiding illegal immigrants. But putting any of that aside, the fact is they were using campaign funds illicitly, and that I think is an issue. And they probably wasn't helpful that the Beto campaign was involved with that, because it was found on tape. And now, if you move over to the House, and I studied the results and I looked at them, and I see the Democrats flipped seats in 13 states, and they picked up 26 seats. It's a nice pickup. But what's interesting is Trump only visited 4 of those states. And as I just mentioned, in the Senate seats, Trump flipped 4 Senate seats, and he visited all those states. The states that flipped to the Republicans, Trump visited a lot. The states where they lost seats, Trump didn't visit for the most part. A lot of those seats were in California. I think there was Virginia. I think there were 3 seats. Florida, 2 seats. Utah, 1. I don't have it in front of me, and then the rest were in California. There might have been 1 in Minnesota. There's a couple here and there, but it was 26 in total. It was a nice pickup. Although, as far as midterms go for a first-term president, it's very low. Generally, I think Obama and Clinton in their first term, Nixon, all of them lose between 40, 50, 60 seats. So it wasn't that much of a repudiation. And of course, the idea here was it was a red wave, a blue wave coming. So to get less than half of what you would normally be expected to get in the ordinary course of a midterm election and get that is not a blue wave. And then, of course, to lose the Senate, to lose additional Senate seats, that's even more unheard of. Because generally, you would be expected to pick up seats. They actually lost seats. So the House, the Senate was 51-49. You would have expected in a normal course that the Democrats might pick up 2 or 3 or 4 seats and take control of the House. Now, the polls didn't expect that, but the point is, it's looking like the Republicans are going to have to pick up of 2 to 4, maybe 5 seats. I think Montana finally went to the tester, to the Democrat. They might have a recount in Florida, but I'm not quite sure that will happen. And then we don't know about Arizona. All right, so clearly Trump wasn't, by either being there or not being there, had an impact for sure. Now, he then had a press conference today. And like any politician, he's going to put the best light on the events. He's not going to say he's not going to lead with we lost in the House. He's going to lead with the thing that I led with was that they won in the Senate. And then, he did that and he mentioned what I mentioned. He gave the statistics of how traditionally what happens in these elections and who gets what and how much you normally get. And that generally you lose in the midterms. You generally lose both the House and the Senate, and you lose more House seats than were lost this time. So he led with that. But then he made another point, which I hadn't picked up with when I was doing my analysis, I looked at all the different races. I went through who was the incumbent in the House as well, and who was running against whom and what the results were. And when I looked at the results, I noticed, this is my analysis, not Trump's, was that the margin of victory in, I think it was, I got to find the stats here. I think I looked at the 13 toss-ups that they had identified and where they had flipped the seats, where the Republicans were vulnerable and they were considered toss-ups. I believe my analysis showed that the Democrats won 10 of those, 10 or 11 of those, and only one of those races was won by more than 2 points, which meant that they were so close, they were razor thin. There was one that statistically was 50-50, but of course someone got more votes. You can have a statistical 50-50 pretty much when you round off the numbers. But they were very, very close races. And again, 13 of those, 10 or 11 went to the Democrats. Now that is, which means that on a given night, or if Trump had visited, they might have gone the other way. But very, very interesting. During the press conference, he mentioned that he went through a number of the Republicans who had lost. And he mentioned Carlos Curbelo in Florida. He mentioned Mia Love in Utah, and a woman named Barbara Comstock, Mike Kaufman. He mentioned like 4 or 5 of the people that lost. And lost, within the 2 to 5 point margin of error. And he said that he doesn't know whether he should be happy or sad about this, but they all had rejected his help. He said one of them refused to embrace him. He mentioned that Mia Love had asked for him help on some things, but he said she showed me no love when it came to campaigning for her. So basically, he tried to make the case, and I think he did successfully, that the candidates that won, the Republicans that won, did receive his help, and they won bigly. He didn't say that, but that was what I'm sure he was thinking. And that's possible that some of these Republicans who ran away from him lost. Now, for example, Uger, I think is his name, ran against Menendez, who was a very weak candidate in New Jersey. And it's very hard to flip New Jersey. But that guy ran a campaign against Menendez on hey, I'm not always going to be in Trump's side, I'm going to be an independent. And, that's not as forceful as, hey, I'm with Trump, I'm for the wall, I'm for the whole Trump agenda, the MAGA stuff. He didn't want to go there. But apparently in some parts of the world or some parts of the country, that works. What generally doesn't work is when you're wishy-washy, when you say, well, I'm kind of for it, but I'm not really for it. And the kind of stuff that McCaskill did when she tried to say, well, I'm not really one of those crazy Democrats. People like to hear, no, I am one of those crazy Democrats. The reason Gillum did so well, because he didn't apologize that he was a left-leaning socialist and he wanted to raise taxes. He didn't come out and say, well, I don't want anyone to know this, and I'm not really a radical. No, he came out and he campaigned for who he was. I think no matter what your position is, whether it's right-wing or left-wing, you win when you present yourself as genuinely believing the position you take. When you act like McCaskill and you say, well, I don't know, that's not really what I am, or those are crazy Democrats. No, you either are one of the, or you do what Bernie Sanders does. You become an independent. Then you can say, I'm not one of those crazy Democrats. I'm an independent. And that's why he wins. People who win, it's got nothing to do with, something to do with their politics. It has something to do with genuinely putting forth who you are. And that's why Trump wins. It's not that Trump has a winning position in that 51% of the people want what he wants. Probably less do. But there's enough people that want what he wants, plus the people who respect that he says what he wants, and you're like, okay, I can go along with that maybe. And you feel comfortable voting for somebody who is who's genuine. So Trump was basically saying that the people who rejected him but still wanted to say they were Republicans are like, well, okay, what kind of Republican are you? And it's hard to define yourself, especially in a congressional campaign. It's much easier to attach yourself. I'm not saying this is a good thing, as a candidate for Congress with a national, and try to get your coattails, unless you're really good on the ground in your community, in your district, and you can actually run on a district-wide issue. You generally have to attach yourself to the party and what they're doing nationally, because really the reason you have Congress people is to send them to Washington, senators, to send them to Washington and get you stuff. They're not there to do anything for you because they're not there. If you want people to do stuff for you in your district, you vote for your state senators, your state legislatures. So generally the people that you send to Washington, all you care about is what they vote for. And that's what Trump managed to exploit with his characterization of the Democrat senators in red states was they're just going to go and vote for, quote, crying Chuck. Now, the other thing that this has done for Trump, in a sense, he was purging those Democrats that lost, those Republicans that lost. And look, you lost, you didn't. It's almost like the Godfather, when he says, "I could have been a friend to you, and then these people would be suffering today." He basically said, you didn't come to me, you didn't ask for my help, so what am I supposed to do? Well, what's going to happen is other people will run for Congress in 2020, and they'll be on the Trump train. I mean, that's just how it works. And you're seeing this happen. You're seeing that the winning horse attracts people to move towards him. McConnell was not a big fan of Trump. McConnell has been won over because Trump put him in charge of appointing judges. McConnell got the judges appointed. McConnell pushed through Kavanaugh. And when he went to Kentucky to do a rally, people went nuts for McConnell. They were cheering him. McConnell never had that type of adoration in his life, and now he's feeling like he's got a legacy. He put in all these judges. He is now on what you would call the Trump train. He's not in the obstructionist. Lindsey Graham, same thing. There was a guy who used to bark behind John McCain and Boehner, and he was an anti-Trumper. He ran against Trump. And now he's his biggest supporter. He's out there yelling, "You're going to destroy this guy. Tell him Lindsey said hello." I mean, he is a big supporter. In fact, he went on TV and he told someone at CNN, he says, "I'm going to support this president. I don't give a beep what you think." I was like, okay. So clearly what happens is someone gets in power and they realize if you want to stay in power yourself or you want some power, you attach yourself to it or you oppose it. What's happened is the Republicans that have opposed him have gone by the wayside. Paul Ryan, he's gone. I mean, he and a losing. It's something the Republicans themselves do a lot. Is they think they win points by attacking other Republicans. It's the Reagan thing, says you never, cardinal rules, you never attack other Republicans. They tend to do that. We're going to see with Collins did today. They tend to think they win points and they appear moderate if they attack their own. You see that with Massey in Nebraska. I told him not to pick Kavanaugh. You know, that they leave that to the Democrats to complain about what the Republicans do. Corker, gone from Tennessee. Graham is now in the fold. Flake in Arizona, same thing. He's gone. Now McSally may replace him, or they'll have lost Arizona. But Flake was not in the Trump train, so to speak. He was on the outs. He thought it was his moral duty to resist. Well, then he could become a Democrat. There's no point in being a Republican. I know some people say, well, you know, he's got this moral obligation to retain the party. Well, if the party is basically moved away from you, then I would leave. I'd go be a Democrat. I wouldn't stay in the tent and try to make them see my point of view. And the other side, I mean, the Trump side is winning for the Republicans. There's no two ways about it. You may disagree with how they're winning. You may disagree with their policies. But do you want to lose? And their argument would be yes. Because then if we lose, then we could take control back of the party. Yeah, and then you would lose too. So what good does that do anybody? Yeah, Boehner's gone. A lot of these people, they're gone. And those Congress people who lost, they'll probably be gone too. Now, the other point Trump made in the press conference was that 44 Republicans had chosen to retire. That hurts too, because when you're trying to run for re-election and you put these new people in, I mean, unless you've got your own stable of Ocasio-Cortez, you know, real up-and-comers that are going to light the district on fire like she did. I mean, she went in there and she won. But generally, people aren't, and that's also because she got a lot of media attention. Republican candidates are not going to get a lot of media attention. New Republicans, well, that's not an exciting thing to CNN or MSNBC. We got a new Republican candidate in District 16 in Pennsylvania. Who cares? So, okay. And then Trump did say, I retired, Flake. I did the country a great service. So he clearly, during the press conference, made a big deal out of his role, rightfully, in helping the senators get elected. And he did mention one the congressman he helped get reelected in Kentucky. That's where McConnell got all his cheers. And that's where you had Rand Paul, who was never a big fan of the president, also up there realizing that, you know, it's in his interest, may not agree with Trump, but it's in his interest to promote his party's president. But Trump clearly went after the candidates that lost. And politically, he's not losing anything. He may look like a bit of a jerk or something for doing that. You know, he said, Mia Love gave me no love and she lost, too bad. And then he said, sorry about that, Mia. And, you know, he somewhat belittled them. But generally, those people, they weren't a political asset anyway. They were actually a negative because they're saying, we're going to win without him. And if they had won without him, then they wouldn't owe him anything. And since they lost, he said, too bad, Mike, about Mike Kaufman. So anyway, that's what happened there. Now, also interesting is Obama, I think he lost 4 out of 4. I mean, he went in strong for Abrams. He went in strong for Gillum, Nelson, and he was out there. Just think about where this economy started. And didn't work. He didn't have the same crowds. He didn't have the 2008 magic. And again, he wasn't on the ballot. And so didn't help. Yeah, Gillum's, Abrams. All right, now, before we're going to do the press conference briefly, but one of the first thing I thought of when he won the Senate, but not the House, was, well, now he's in a position where he's still got that trump card of all of the documents that haven't been declassified, which we know, or we expect, well, we do know, because we've seen many of the documents in redacted form, and we know from what the congressmen and the senators have said, they've seen them, they know what's in them, and they say there's a lot of damaging stuff in there with respect to the investigation, how it was conducted, who knew what. And we also know that Trump probably also knows about a lot of the leaking that was done by Adam Schiff, Dianne Feinstein, and that he wasn't going to bring it up, but if they're going to go after him, this is before he even said anything. I said before he even tweeted anything, I wrote at 7 o'clock this morning, the Democrat victory in the House all but ensures that Trump will eventually declassify a bunch of documents and order them made public. And at 8:11, an hour after I wrote that, tweeted that, Trump said, if the Democrats think they're going to waste taxpayer money investigating us at the House level, then we will likewise be forced to consider investigating them for all the leaks of classified information and much else at the Senate level to can play that game. Now, clearly that's directed at least at Adam Schiff, because Adam Schiff becomes the head of the House Intelligence Committee. He's been saying he's going to get Trump on Russian collusion. He was against the original memo, the Republican memo that showed that there wasn't any. And also, there's been instances where they're having one of these Intelligence Committee meetings. Schiff goes to the bathroom, supposedly, and then later on or the next day, there's a story about what happened in that meeting. And we know there was only 10 people in the meeting, 12 people in the meeting. So there was circumstantial evidence that it was indeed him. And, of course, that's a huge deal. If somebody is doing that, they could be removed from their seat. So we'll see how that goes. Now, before we get to just want to make sure we cover everything up until we get into what he actually said at this press conference. If you missed it, it was quite explosive. One of the things that I also thought of was how the Senate hearings on Kavanaugh were conducted by the Democrats did sink, as we've seen, those Senate reelection campaigns of Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, McCaskill in Missouri, Donnelly in Indiana, nearly sunk Tester in Montana, nearly sunk Manchin in West Virginia, but he actually voted for Kavanaugh. And if Pelosi, Waters, and Schiff are not careful, and they decide they're going to have investigations and hearings, all with the idea that they're going to impeach Trump, they could come across worse than the Democrats came across when they were trying to scuttle Kavanaugh, because, for two reasons. If you're going to go for impeachment, first of all, you have to have a case. And right now, as far as I know, there is no case. There's no crime or misdemeanor. You can't say, well, I don't like him. Impeach 45. Impeach him for what? If you want to get rid of someone, you vote him out. If you want to make him ineffective, you undermine his policies, his arguments. You portray him a certain way. You even smear him the way Pelosi says. You do the wrap-up smear. But what you don't do is you don't try to impeach somebody. That's like making a false accusation. I mean, when they went after Clinton, they actually had impeachable things, but no one thought it was worth removing him from office for. But if you don't have anything to impeach him on other than you don't like him and you want to get rid of him, and then, of course, not only does that look bad, but they're not going to get 67 votes in the Senate to vote to remove Trump. He has a 51% or 48%, whatever it is, approval rating, which means he doesn't have a 33% approval rating with the people. So it's not like everybody wants him to go. There's people that want him to go, but not 66% of the people. And the Senate's made up of 53, 54 senators. None of them are going to vote to remove Trump, or maybe Mitt Romney might, but it's just not going to happen. So it's actually a waste of time, and you're going to come off very, very badly. So I was thinking, I could see maybe Maxine Waters not having the judgment. Just figure, look, this is how I got here, and I'm just going to keep yelling and screaming. Even if Schiff didn't have his own issues with the leaking, he probably would still act like Maxine and probably try to get him just because that's his shtick. But I'm thinking that Pelosi's is not going to be that politically unsavvy, because if you remember what happened with McConnell, he thinks now, with all the adulation he's getting, that he has a legacy, that he has become the big Republican Senate majority leader. He has a legacy now. He appointed all these judges. He appointed 2 Supreme Court judges. he's satisfied with himself now, and he's happy to appoint more judges, and that's what he's going to do. Not appoint them, but help run them through the Senate, which, by the way, the House can't stop. So Trump is going to end up probably with 40% of all the appointees on the district and the appellate courts, and he might even end up with half of the Supreme Court if he gets another 2 or 3 appointees. But back to Maxine Waters. Now remember who she is. She had a very big legislative achievement. She passed Obamacare. She went around and made sure that every last Democrat voted for it. Even Democrats like Kucinich, who was against it because he wanted single payer. There were many Democrats who did not want Obamacare. They were, again, some of them are red states who just don't like that type of healthcare program. She managed to get every last one of them. So she is a very able administrator. I mean, she's not the best of public speakers. She's not inspiring. She kind of sounds like she can't speak, and she is politically astute. Well, she's not dumb enough to lead a 2-year campaign against Trump, trying to get him impeached when she knows she can't do it. Remember, she knew it was an uphill battle to get Obamacare passed. She did it. It's almost a futile task, not futile task to try to get rid of a president through impeachment under the current facts and circumstances where he's done nothing wrong. Now, if he goes and commits a crime, or we find out he's committed a crime, that's different. But from what they know, Maxine is just saying we're going to impeach 45. She's not saying on what basis. That's not too smart. And I think what Nancy Pelosi wants to do is her legacy. She wants to be, she passed Obamacare. She may even do a deal to somehow work on a new health care, do something. And if she can somehow be the person who stands up against Trump but actually manages to accomplish, let's say they get a DACA deal. Somehow they get a tax cut deal, or they tax the rich a bit, and they give the middle class some, and some of it goes to health care. I think that's what she's going to do. I don't think she's going to be rabid, and I could be wrong with it. My guess is she's not the speaker because she has no political sense. You may think that she doesn't have any sense whatsoever when she says, we're going to have to read the plan to find out what's in it. We're going to have to pass it first. I mean, that kind of stuff is just, you think that, but she has political instinct. So I don't think she's going to, I could be wrong. I think Maxine may be chomping at the bit to go after him, but that's not her job as the head of the Financial Services Committee, as the majority ranking member. What's she going to go after him for? Well, maybe she wanted to get his tax returns. I don't know. And again, how do tax returns help anyone? I mean, for me, I'd rather get a tax cut. I'd rather get the healthcare thing figured out. I'd rather get whatever issue I'm in. I don't care about his tax returns. So if I find out he did what, I'm sure he's done something that either I wouldn't understand or that might make me mad that I don't have that much money. But other than that, it's not gonna help me in any way to spend congressional time and effort to try to get his tax returns. Now, the people who want his tax returns are just against him. They just want to get him for something. But that doesn't help most people. All right. So as we saw, the stock market went up. Now, Trump also said, and he slipped, and I'm going to play a bit of this conference. They were asking him, look, is that really what you're going to do? Like, they're going to go after you, you're going to go after them? And he said, I kind of have to. It's not like you can let them go after me and then I'm like trying to do a deal with them on health care or taxes. It's going to be all consuming. If they do that, then I'm just going to have to do it back. And that is a very interesting thing about the Trump presidency is the press and his opponents almost expect, like, why don't you just let us beat you up? Why can't we just call you a racist? Why can't we just harass you? Why can't we just characterize you the way we want you to be characterized? And why don't you just accept that what we want is the way it's going to be? And he fights back all the time. And you have this dynamic, which I don't think Nancy Pelosi either has the stomach for, is even wise to engage in. So I don't think she's going to do that. Now, at the press conference, same thing. From the first question, it was all, we want to challenge you on this. We want to challenge you on that. We heard you said something racist 5 years ago. You know, it's not like oh, congratulations on winning. You know, not that they have to be sycophants, but they from the minute they start, they're at him, and then he's right back at them, and it's very hostile, and they're both blaming each other for being hostile, but neither one of them wants to put down the hostile shotgun. I mean, they're both just railing at each other, and they both realize it's unhealthy, but it's almost as if the press believes it's their duty to remove him because he shouldn't be there. And that's the main thing. It's not that they disagree with him. They just don't think he should be there. It's not even that they really disagree with his policies because, you know, all Republicans have policies that maybe you don't like, but they really go after him anyway. So Jim Acosta, who you could tell has no respect for Trump, and Trump has no respect for him, went at it. And at one point, well, I'll play it for you. It's like a 2-minute clip, and I'll try to narrate what I'm seeing because we won't have this on the screen. But they try to take the microphone away from him, and here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me
that. Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants
in
this election
to
try to keep them?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, you know, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an
invasion. Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
Right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
would
be
ask,
much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you...
Okay, so there he's basically said, okay, I'm going to take another question, and Acosta persists in trying to get his next question in or make his point.
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President.
me. That's enough.
Okay, when he says, pardon me, ma'am, the White House aide gets up and goes to take the microphone from him so she can give it to somebody else. And then...
Enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned...
He still has the mic.
...that you may have...
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian
investigation
because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Okay, so now Trump walks away from the platform as if he's either not going to take any more questions or he's going to end the press conference or he's going to signal security. And then his aide, who's sitting next to Acosta, goes to get the mic again. And he tries to stop her, and they wrestle with the mic for a couple of seconds, and she gets it away from him. Then Trump walks back to the podium because Acosta has now sat down.
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not a
like
big
the rest
fan
of
of
us.
yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly
said... You are the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly...
Now Acosta stands up again and starts talking.
Over the course of the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
All right. So that was Trump today at the press conference. And he spent over, it's like almost 2 hours answering questions about what happened. And yeah, okay. So Lindsey Graham made the point that when the GOP maintains control of the Senate, the conservative judicial train is going to keep going. Okay. So now Trump is finished with his press conference and nothing has been fixed. I mean, there's still, the press has got a bad tone. Trump has a bad tone. And he's basically said, and I'm going to have a bad tone if the Democrats have a bad tone. But he did say, I think I can work with Nancy Pelosi and we'll see what happens. But he did warn them that if they go after him, he's going to go after them. Okay. And that was basically at the point where I said, okay, well, we'll just see how all this shakes out. And then we find out around, when did I find this out here? It looks like about 2:30, 3 o'clock, that Attorney General Sessions had resigned. Now, a while back, I had these discussions, and we did a couple of videos on this, where I mentioned all this QAnon stuff, trust the plan, was nonsense. It's the same as the gold back you on. These are narrative pumper type things where trust the plan, Sessions is just playing possum. He's got 8,000 sealed indictments ready to go. And all right. No. And that this was like some sting operation where Trump was just pretending that Sessions wasn't doing his job and that... when the Congress attacked them, it was because Trump told them, go after Sessions because we're just going to then we're going to turn around and we're going to go get him. And Sessions is going to come off the mattress with all these sealed indictments and he's going to be the biggest champion and trust the plan and Q and all this other nonsense. He's playing 4D chess. No, what I've said all along, I always rejected that, was that Sessions, in my opinion, was part of the original plan, which was to watch Trump, to inject him in the campaign, and with the idea that Trump would appoint him as Attorney General. Why? Well, because then he could watch over the whole Russian investigation hoax and appoint Rosenstein, and then he recused himself. You don't ask for that position and then say, I'm going to recuse myself. Why? Why would you want that position? Why would you want to be the, quote, deputy of Donald Trump? I'm out there supporting the president. And then say, I'm not going to support him. I'm going to quit. I'm going to recuse myself and report this here fella, Rosenstein. No. It had to be planned in advance that he wasn't either, or he's just incompetent. I mean, he just doesn't know what he's doing. There's no reason for him to recuse himself. He spoke to a Russian at the Republican National Convention in plain view. It's not like he should recuse himself. So anyway, he resigned, and that was no surprise to me. I thought he was going to get fired or resign. Actually, he did get fired. He was told by General Kelly that the president wanted him to resign, so he resigned. And he wrote that in his resignation letter. The president told me to resign. That's like, you can't fire me, I quit. Now, but I have said, however, that Trump has all the knowledge about what happened to him. Like when he said they spied on me, everyone thought, that's ridiculous. How can you say that? That was one of the first things he said. That Obama had spied on Trump Tower. He knows what's going on. He's seen all the documents. He has access to all these documents. He can't declassify them without actually having them, so he knows what they say and what's in them. And he knows who's playing what game. He knows about Rosenstein wearing a wire and all that kind of stuff. And the idea that Rosenstein ended up being in charge of the special counsel, which he appointed, and then Sessions isn't supposedly not paying attention, so then what is he doing? He's doing other stuff, but a lot of people say, well, that's just because he's working behind the scenes to prepare the indictments. No, he's not. He farmed that out to nowhere, to the guy Huber out in Utah, and he's not doing anything. So Sessions is in charge of, Rosenstein, because Sessions has recused himself, is running Mueller. That Mueller reports to Rosenstein. Now, the reason that's ridiculous is Rosenstein, in the first place, should never... He is more conflicted than Sessions. Why? Well, Rosenstein wrote a memo, whether he was directed to write the memo by Trump or not, saying that Comey shouldn't be the FBI director and that he's a disaster and that if they didn't get rid of him, the FBI would never recover. Rosenstein's own words, give or take, that's basically what he said. and it was a recommendation that Trump fire him. Trump fires him, and the special counsel wants to investigate whether Trump committed obstruction of justice in firing. Now, whether that's a valid, I think it's a silly charge, but it's a legitimate, not a legitimate charge. It's a real charge. So how can Rosenstein, who encouraged Trump to fire Mueller, be supervising Mueller investigating him into firing Comey? Doesn't make any sense. Now, it also means that either if he's not only conflicted, if he was instructed to write that memo, then he's further conflicted, or he's just completely incompetent, where the president tells him to do something, he does it, and then he goes and appoints a special counsel to investigate what he's done. Doesn't make any sense. The other thing is, when Rosenstein was at the Rosenstein, I don't know. When he was at the FBI, he signed one of the FISA warrants, which gave the FBI permission to conduct surveillance on the Trump campaign. So how is he, which is the heart of, or one of the main reasons that there's a special counsel, was that supposedly in the FISA warrant, they wanted to conduct surveillance, and the reason they had renewed it 4 times was they were concerned, so they say, that there was some type of hanky-panky going on between the Russians and the Trump campaign. And so he signed that. Now he's supervising the guy who's investigating the Russian collusion angle when he signed one of the documents that allowed the FBI to pursue the Russian collusion angle. So he shouldn't be there anyway. And furthermore, it's according to other FBI members, fellow workers, said that he had proposed that he wear a wire to catch Trump saying stupid stuff so that they can impeach him under the 25th Amendment. So there's really no reason for Rosenstein to be in charge of the Mueller investigation. There's the question of whether there should even be a Mueller investigation. So, Sessions leaves. Now, people mistook that, well, Rosenstein's not going to be part of the Mueller investigation. Well, that's right. He's not. He's not fired. But basically, he's not. Now, listen to this. This is Susan Collins. She is our senator from Maine. And she is concerned, as is Chuck Schumer and so many others. Oh, my goodness, this is now, Schumer says, a constitutional crisis. We don't have Sessions anymore, and now they're going to end the Mueller. They make it sound like the Mueller campaign is the most important. Mueller investigation is the most important investigation that the country's ever had. And the proponents of the Mueller investigation point to the fact that there's been indictments. But they've indictments that have nothing to do with the original, or what the purpose is. I mean, they're nothing to do with whether it was Russian collusion with the Trump campaign in the 2016 election. But yet, they're all getting excited. It has to happen. We heard Trey Gowdy say this. A lot of Republicans spout this. The Democrats spout it, that his work is so important to our democracy and so on. And when you say, well, they haven't come up with anything, this nonsense, 31 indictments. Yeah, over taxi medallion cabs that were hidden by Cohen, Trump's counsel, who didn't pay tax on, failing to register as a foreign agent by whatever that guy's name is. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. None of them had anything to do with, they worked for Trump at some point, but they had nothing to do with colluding with Russia. They're just indictments for these guys' bad behavior, these tax evasions, process crimes, but nothing to do with. So the question is, why is this investigation so important if it's just focused on finding like the crimes that people that work for Trump might have committed? It doesn't make much sense. But they're very hot on it. They think it's like the most important thing. But the question is, if you are going to have this, why is it so important that Rosenstein be involved in it? We've just shown why he shouldn't be involved with it. Sessions shouldn't have recused himself in the first place, and I tend to believe that Sessions was in on this in the first place because it doesn't make any sense for him to do this. So when he gets rid of Sessions, he's now thinking, well, with this bulletproof Senate majority, I can replace Sessions with pretty much whomever I want, and crying Chuck Schumer can't do anything about it. Well, he replaced them with Sessions' chief of staff, this guy named Whitaker. And Susan Collins is right at it, right out of the chute. She says, it's imperative. Like, imperative means it's like, it's essential that the administration not impede the Mueller investigation. This is the most important thing that this country can do, is complete the Mueller investigation. I'm concerned Rod Rosenstein will no longer overseeing the probe. Okay. Special counsel Mueller must be allowed to complete his work without interference, regardless of who the AG is. So she's not so much concerned that this guy, Matthew Whitaker, former chief of staff or chief counsel to Sessions, is the guy. She's worried that the Mueller investigation won't continue and that Rod Rosenstein needs to be kept on as the guy overseeing it. Now, first of all, there's enough Democrats that make these type of inane points. What work is Mueller doing, and what's the basis for him to be doing the work? Those are the more important questions. In fact, there is a court case to determine whether the basis for Mueller's appointment is even valid, because apparently Rosenstein signed something that gave him like just general investigatory powers, which is not how a special counsel is supposed to operate. So you've got that issue, and there's a court case to determine, I think it starts Thursday, whether this is even a valid investigation. But here you have Miss Collins making it sound like this is the most important thing and it has to stay, and Rosenstein has to stay. And I'm saying to myself, why? We don't even know whether we should even be protecting this. We don't know whether the investigation or the counsel was properly appointed, whether the scope was proper, whether what they've done is proper, or even how they came up with the idea that they were going to have a special counsel was proper. But yet, she's saying that this is the most important thing. Now, what's even more confusing for me about Miss Collins is why is she concerned about Rosenstein? First of all, the only reason that Rosenstein is the counsel is because Sessions recused. Is the only reason Rosenstein is overseeing Mueller is because Sessions recused himself. In the normal course, if you have a special counsel, the special counsel reports to the Attorney General. But because Sessions said, I talked to a Russian, I can't oversee this, he gave it to Rosenstein. However, now that there's a new interim Attorney General, there's no reason for the new Attorney General to give it to Rosenstein when he should be overseeing it directly. So Rosenstein should be gone. Why Susan Collins wants him to be there doesn't make any sense. Just on that fact alone, just the normal succession methodology would be the Attorney General oversees an appointed special counsel. In a special circumstance where the Attorney General recuses himself, well, then he gives it to his Deputy Attorney General, Rosenstein. But when you get a new Attorney General, why should the Deputy Attorney General remain on the case? Especially if the guy's name is Rosenstein and he has those conflicts about signing the FISA warrant, about writing the Comey should be fired memo, and about saying, I'm going to wear a wire and catch the president. There's no reason why Trump would want him anywhere near that case for valid reasons and for personal reasons. But Susan Collins says it's imperative that they do not impede the Mueller investigation, which, by the way, he hasn't said he was. He's just got a new Attorney General. They didn't fire Sessions because Sessions is not doing his job. He's recused from the biggest thing. So the new Attorney General will oversee it. He didn't say he's going to oversee it and interfere with it. And she's concerned that Rod Rosenstein will no longer be overseeing the probe. What's so special about him? And again, what's so special about the Mueller investigation? So we'll see what happens with that. But I find it interesting that, again, it's an example where Republicans think it's up to them to jump. There's enough Democrats, believe me, that can make these arguments. And they will make these arguments. I'm not saying that you have to be intellectually dishonest as a Republican and not attack. But there's no need for you to grandstand like that, because you don't think that these points or these inane thoughts don't occur to Democrats? I mean, there's a point. I mean, you pick your battles. What's the what vested interest does a Republican senator from Maine have in making sure that Rod Rosenstein stays on the case, when, as we've already pointed out, as a technical matter, he shouldn't be on the case when there's a new Attorney General, and as a practical and specific matter, he shouldn't be on the case anyway. But that's where we are with that, and we'll see. I actually think what's going to happen is the next move is Mueller. Now, Mueller can either, if I were him, I would wrap it up and be gone. Because it looks like if there was some type of attempted way of trying to frame Donald Trump to be shown as colluding with the Russians, that's failed. And Trump has all the documents that show that that's perhaps what they tried to do. Also, Mueller has no cover in government left at all. All his FBI cronies gone or fired. Comey, Page, Strzok, Baker. Orr is still there, but they're watching him like a hawk. Sessions is gone. He doesn't have any backup. Rosenstein is out of the picture. So now Mueller's going to have to produce a report. And who's he going to give it to? He's not going to give it to Rosenstein. He's going to say, I'm not showing anybody. I don't want to show anybody. He's going to give it to the new attorney general. And now it's out in the open. There's no more cover. And Mueller has to think about his legacy. He's been supposedly this big, smart FBI director for years, man of integrity. What's he going to say? I didn't find anything? Well, that's better than trying to make up a story. I think all along they just try to run Trump out of town. Starting with the as soon as he got there, they actually did the wrap-up smear. Clapper sent Comey to see Trump his first week and say, hey, we got this stuff and these it says that you were in Russia and the prostitutes were pissing on the bed. Yeah, you hear about that? And then they leak that to the media, so now everybody knows it's a story because Comey told Trump that. So now it becomes, oh, now we can release the fact that there's this dossier out there and it has all this information, which then Comey screwed up by saying it was never verified and it was salacious. And they're like, well, why did you sign the FISA warrant on that basis? Oh, I think there were other reasons why we signed. And it turns out there weren't other reasons. That was the bulk of why they signed the FISA warrant. So the whole thing is, as a backup plan, and we never would have known any of this, has gone, if Hillary Clinton had won, and they expected her to win, the plan is shot. Page is not there. Strzok is not there. They're talking at cross purposes with each other. So Mueller, unless he's got the goods, which of course if he did, he wouldn't have spent all that time chasing down Cohen. The reason they chased down Cohen was try to grab his tapes and see if he had something so they can get Trump on something else. That's the reason they went after Cohen, not because Cohen had anything to do with Russia collusion. They realized they had nothing. That's what happens when you have a special counsel. Look what they got Clinton for. People don't remember. Clinton got impeached for the Monica Lewinsky stuff. That's not what they didn't. The special counsel wasn't appointed to find out whether Clinton was having oral sex performed on him. That wasn't the purpose of the special counsel. It had to do with Whitewater. But somehow they figure you find the guy, they find the crime. And that's what they pinned on Clinton. And they're just trying to pin something on Trump, because if there was Russian collusion, you would have had it and they would have had him in handcuffs. They would have gotten him a long time ago. And they're still looking for it, which means the fact that they're looking for something meant that there was no evidence in the first place to appoint the special counsel. Because if there was, they would have found that evidence, they would have built on the evidence, and they would have just either indicted him or they would have made it public as part of their report. They haven't done that. They've gone after Manafort is the guy's name. Manafort, everybody for stuff that has nothing to do with anything. So I think that Mueller's going to fold up his tent because he knows it's not going to lead to impeachment anymore. That train has already left the station. And I don't think he wants to be involved in being investigated, because I think that's what they're going to do. The House does its investigation. The Senate will do theirs. And they're going to investigate Comey for leaking. They're going to investigate Page, Strzok, all those people. And and then they're going to investigate how was the special counsel's investigation run. Why were there 17 Democrats? Who was, they had the guy, Strzok was on it originally, even though he had, as it turned out, because they got documents, he had extreme animus and bias towards the president. So, any event, what does this all mean for the markets? It means that there is a bit of a standoff, which is good for the markets. There's a bit of uncertainty, which is good for gold and silver. And it'll play out, but I think that the cards have all shifted in favor of the president on this particular topic. He's not going to be impeached. Well, he might be impeached, but he's not going to get removed for impeachment the way the current facts are right now. And the Mueller thing, unless I'm missing something, and I've tried to find everything else I can about this, all the source documents, unless he has something, which a lot of people want to believe he has just because they want to believe it, not because there's any indication that he has anything. That's going to get wrapped up, and then you're going to see, I don't know, you might see Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump become buddies. Who knows? Let me see what you guys think. Let's go over and take a look at the comments. All right, let's see. We got a good crowd here tonight. Let's see what we got. Puppy stuff. I'm not sure why Sessions wasn't out long ago. He was concerned with the appearance before the midterms that there might be political fallout, and I think that's the reason. Also, some people thought, and he probably wanted to give people this impression too once he found out that people were thinking this way, that Sessions was actually working for his benefit. This was all just a fake ruse, trust the plan, he's really working for him. I never believed that. I thought they should have just kicked him out and that he should have gone after them. And I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to get a new attorney general appointed. Could be someone like, probably won't be Giuliani because he's his lawyer now, but someone, an aggressive prosecutor. And they're going to flip the tables. So they're going to investigate the investigation. All right. Did you see after post-election today on CNN, I had a good laugh, Mr. Trump looked like a kindergarten teacher. Yeah, I had a friend who told me the same thing. It was at that point where he was telling Acosta to sit down, and Acosta wasn't sitting down. I've been a teacher. And when you have a recalcitrant student who is openly defying you, you start to say to yourself, okay, if I allow this to continue, it may turn into that other kids will say, okay, it's free-for-all. It's substitute teacher time. So he did exactly what he was supposed to. He walked off to the side to diffuse so that he wasn't facing down or staring down. You'd never want to get into a shouting match with someone like that, because if the guy has the nerve to shout back at you, well, now you're on the same level and you're no longer in charge of the classroom, so to speak. So he walked off to the side and gave Acosta a chance to back down, which he really didn't. And that's why I think he also did say, okay, I might have to call security here. But then he thought probably to himself, I don't want to be looking like I'm removing reporters. So he moved back, and then he regained control of the situation by telling him that he was a horrible reporter and all that. Was interesting. Max Strong is here. Greetings. CIA. Okay. Annabelle. Why do Democrats persist in the infantile idea that if they market their candidates as cool rock stars, the world is going to scream, we love Democrats? The idea that somehow supposed to get genuinely excited over Beto O'Rourke. Why? I don't care what his positions are. It's like, he's just the guy, and he's going to give a speech, and he's going to say, and we're all going to... It just rings so false to me. They're not rock stars. If I want to see a rock star, I'll go. I'm not even that impressed with rock stars, but at least they're talented and they play music. A guy who begs for your votes and then he rides a skateboard, and then he dropped the F-bomb last night. I'm so blanking proud of all of you. He's like, oh, you're so great. Yeah, he's so proud of me. That's what I want. But you know what? There are people, but it's actually a legitimate question. It's not Democrats. Why do people listen to nonsense? And I mean that. I mean, for example, there are people out there prognosticating about the price of gold, the price of silver, where the market's at, whatever it is. And they are wrong 100% of the time for years. And yet, why do people still listen to them? I don't know. And why do you listen to me? But my point is that people, they tend to want to believe in something. So if they can create this everybody loves Beto. We're all at the Beto campaign. Look how cool he is. I'm cool because I like Beto too. That's why I had all the... But if you think about it, only 48% of the Texans even voted for him. It's a form of, it's AstroTurf. What's interesting is the Trump rallies, they keep trying to say, I read in the comments all the time, that he pays people to go to those rallies. It's obviously not true. Whether you like him or not, he goes out there and people want to hear what he has to say. And actually what he has to say, he doesn't say much at all. I think the reason they like Trump is because, unlike politicians, he actually talks like a regular person. He gets up there and he talks. And we're not, only towards the end when he gives his whole, and we will not bend, and we will not break. Who wants to hear that stuff? But, so I don't think it's Democrats. I think all politicians act like that. And people act like that. They like to follow things. Beto is finito. No, he's going to be president. He's going to run for president. You need to lose Texas first, and then you path to the presidency. Imagine Lyndon Johnson. He wrote the book, Path to Power. He said, well, I realized the first thing I needed to do was run for senator of Texas and lose. Then I knew at that point I could become president. Lion Ted. Upcycled his beautiful Ted. Honest Ted. Who replaces Sessions? Well, there's a guy, I mentioned his name, Matthew something or other. He was the chief of staff, I think, for Sessions. Hopefully someone with grit and conviction. Well, now he gets to pick someone. And again, he gets to pick somebody, and Kamala Harris can cross-examine him and act superior to him, and Cory Booker can have his Spartacus moment, and Susan Collins can ask him questions, and Lindsey Graham can say, why are you going to make a good attorney general? They can all do that, but they're going to approve him because they have the votes now. See, Sessions had a trouble because it was anybody who got appointed, like Kavanaugh. You had to worry that a couple of Republicans might not vote, but now it's most likely he's going to get whoever he wants it, unless he's going to pick somebody who's, got a criminal background. But not one that's invented, but an actual criminal background. Whitaker, that's his name. Yeah, he said he would prosecute Hillary Sedano. He also, he did mention that, and he also mentioned that what the succession would look like, as if he knew this was going to happen, that the person would take over and then Rosenstein wouldn't do it. And that also he said that the new person would cut the funding from Mueller. And that would, in a sense, end the investigation. John Moore is here. Hello, John. All right. Apparently, Chuck Schumer and Sessions should recuse himself because they said, yeah, well, Chuck Schumer is going to make all the, but he's lost a few decibels on his voice now because his Senate has been reduced. So he doesn't have, and he doesn't have guys like Flake, Corker anymore. He's got Bresnan, Marsha, whatever her name is, from Tennessee. He doesn't even have some what you call rhinos to plead to because they're gone. And he doesn't have, like, Lindsey Graham would have listened to that stuff 2 years ago. Lindsey Graham's not going to listen to it anymore. Lindsey Graham knows now that his chance to be a popular and a famous person with a legacy is by attaching himself to the Trump thing. It's obvious he's flipped. Yeah, it could be. I don't know, Max, if he had any dirt on him. I actually think that Lindsey Graham, when he first came in, you got to go back before he was McCain's lapdog. He was Gingrich's lapdog. He was part of the contract with America. He was a young congressman, I think he was. But he was part of that, and he was a very standard, dyed-in-the-wool conservative. And then he became like a McCain neocon. And if they ask I want a lawyer, you tell them you don't get a lawyer. I mean, he was on that train, and now he's changed again. And I think it's only because he needed to attach himself to a star, and it wasn't his own. I think now he thinks he's old enough, he's senior enough, and he realizes that he's got cover from Trump, which is more cover than you could get from McCain or even Gingrich, because he's got cover from the president. So I think that's why he's changed. Ron Paul, both Pauls. John Moore, not a political guy, but Ron Paul speaks a message that I wish Ron Paul was president. You know what the problem is with Ron Paul? It's not a problem with him. Politics has moved past political philosophy. Ron Paul used to preach and interject into the debate the concept of the Constitution. You don't hear that stuff anymore. That's gone. You never hear Trump talk. He doesn't care anything about not that he doesn't care about it. He doesn't guide his principles on the Constitution. To him, everything's a deal. It's a negotiation. He has like this vague sense of like there's things you can and can't do under the Constitution. But Ron Paul was very much a constitutionalist. And there's really, his son doesn't really preach that stuff either. So Ron Paul leaving left a big vacuum. He removed the entire idea that the Congress and the Senate should act in accordance with the Constitution. So people, it's been a while now. There aren't many. If you go online, Ron Paul's become like a gold salesman. I mean, you don't really. I'm not saying he's a gold salesman. What I mean is they use him to talk about sound money, but the ideas of principles of the Constitution, you don't hear that much anymore. All right. Mr. Trump said they can play that game, but we can play it better, said Pablo Pena. Yes, and he also said under his breath, I know more than they know. Meaning, is the way I look at it is, meaning that they think they can come after me and get my tax returns and come after me on Russian collusion. He knows what they're going to find. But what he's saying is, I already know what I have on you. I already know what's in the documents. So I know more than you do. So, let's have at it. Go ahead. Try to get my stuff and I'll just release what I have on you. And then you're still trying to get my stuff. Big mistake. Yes, I'm a small government guy, but I'm radically anti-war and people will Ron Paul and Rand Paul resonate with me. Yeah, but even the anti-war stuff, actually Trump is very anti-war. He's not, if you think about it. You go back to all the presidents, other than 2 one-day events that we know about in Syria, he hasn't been banging the war. In fact, the idea of this America first and this nationalism, which they're equating to being Hitler, it's actually the reverse. Bit of a long discussion, but I'll try to do it quickly. Nationalism, it came about in the mid-19th century. Lincoln was a nationalist. He wanted one country. Italy, Garibaldi, united the entire country, all the city-states into one nation. Nationalism. Bismarck united all the German city-states into one country. Nationalism. It just means your country first. Now, the movement of nationalism in the United States in the 20s and 30s, there was a ethno-nationalist part of it. It was a partial, like a KKK thing, but also partially it wasn't. It was just that they didn't want the United States going into foreign wars. So there was an America First movement that came about after World War I that did not want the United States to get into World War II. And if you think about the main participants in World War II were the largest, the biggest government types of all. You had FDR, who was the biggest government America had ever had with the New Deal, pretty much nationalizing all of the, a lot of the things that went on in the country, creating new agencies. Hitler was fully top-down fascist, and Stalin was top-down communist. And they were the 3 large combatants in World War II. And the so-called America First people in America, they didn't want to go into World War II. In fact, Buchanan was also of the same type in the 70s. It was the Bushes and the Clintons that went into a lot of wars, and then the Obamas did the same thing. Trump has not put down plans to invade any country. Now, he may decide he wants to invade everyone, but he hasn't done it. If you look at the list of the places that have been bombed by presidents over the last 50, 100 years, I would say, even though Trump has the largest arsenal, I don't think he's used it that much. But that's not because of any constitutional reason. Whereas Ron Paul will tell you that only Congress has the right to declare war. And guess what? In the answers, when was the last time Congress actually wrote up a declaration of war? I'll wait, and I'll go through the rest of your comments here. When was the last time the United States Congress actually issued a declaration of war? And which president requested it? All right, let's see. You guys are talking to yourselves. Okay. Jim, oh, you guys are talking to yourself. Annabelle, your theory of recessions as a mole is exactly what I was thinking. What I think was, from the start, they attached him to the campaign, knowing that Trump would appoint him to a high position and that he would help make sure that whatever plot they had to frame him, especially if he was Attorney General, he'd be in the perfect place. It was a little too much. I don't want to get involved in politics. Like, that's your job. You're the attorney general. You need to know what's going on in the investigation. And recuse yourself because you talked to a Russian didn't sound right to me. All right, let's see. Roger Henley says, Lewis, the reason you might never have 100,000 YouTube subscribers like other channels is because you pump reality, whereas I pump fantasy. Well, that's absolutely true. But I have to say, I was right on this Sessions thing. I never thought it was a ruse. I always thought he just needed to go. I was right on gold back yuan. I was right on no sovereign size gold buy in 45 days. I was right on no silver shortage. I can go on. And what I don't do is I don't come on every night and tell you how right I am about everything. Now, I have been right a lot, but that's not the purpose. I don't pride myself on being right. I pride myself on making the analysis, and that's why you guys are here too. You like to hear the analysis. Could be wrong. I found Q is a myth. Lewis, you have a genuine talent for mimicry. Okay. How about when America interferes at Russian elections during the Clinton administration? I never said that. What do you mean the Clinton administration? Lay off my wife. She's a fine woman. Yeah, they do that. These Russian Facebook trolls must be prosecuted for the sake of democracy and humanity. That's what's ridiculous. They indict Russian troll farms, and then they can't even follow through in the indictment because then they argue they haven't been properly served. All right. Okay, World War II, that is right, not me, says. That is the last time Congress actually, and we haven't been in a war since World War II, actually issued a declaration of war at the request of Franklin Roosevelt. Pretty much correct. All right. All right, let's see. Russian Facebook trivia said that. Roger Henley. Red pill truthers are addicted to fantasy. Trust Sessions. Trust the plan. Yeah. We're all going to be rich. It's always a pump. There's some narrative. People like to hope. They like to believe. JP Morgan has another one. JP Morgan has 800 million ounces of silver. They're stacking the shiny. Yeah, of course they are. They care less about silver. People, and then they get mad when you point out that these stories are complete rubbish. They're rubbish, you know what I mean? I don't believe it. I can't believe it. All right, then. Mueller sent Manafort to jail for process crimes unrelated to Russia committed centuries ago. It can't be. He's not that old, you know what I mean? All right. All right, let's go on here. I think we're almost done. When we get into the mimicry, we got to end up, but let's just see. Hopefully we'll see Trump and Nancy holding hands. Yeah, could be. Trey Gowdy would be good AG. No, he wouldn't. Trey Gowdy talks a good game, and he's really sharp at times, and other times he's confoundingly, he just drops like his interest in something. Like he said, he's for the Mueller investigation, even though he knows there's no basis for it. He changes on a dime. All of a sudden you think, yeah, he's on our side. You want him to be your advocate. And he's like, no, never mind that. Let's talk about something else. That's why I don't think he'd be a good one. Chuck should move to Israel. Crying Chuck Schumer. I haven't done my Trump impression. I'll do that one day. All right. I think that's it here. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Tomorrow. I want to do a economic analysis, and I want to talk about shortages, but not because I'm predicting a shortage and you should run out and buy silver tomorrow because you won't be able to get any. But what happens to commodities when there's a shortage? And how do markets react? And it's got not much to do. It has something to do with price. It has to do with how market participants react to it. So tune in for that tomorrow, and make sure you get your Smaulgld mug. I'm going to leave you with that. I got to get you the Smaulgld mug. Yes, you need a Smaulgld mug. Mugs are real money. By the way, if you do want to buy gold and silver, you can help out the Smaulgolder by purchasing your gold and silver through the affiliate links. I get a small commission. It's not investment advice. I'm not saying you should buy now. But if you're going to buy, you just click on those links. You compare pricing and shipping. I might make $15, $20. Or you can just send $15 or $20. I like that too. You can become I have some nice Smaulgld patrons. And I have some nice people who donate to me occasionally. Get to chat with them online and so on. So if you want to do that, that's always appreciated as well. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, and thanks for your participation.